Hi DJ Producer, and welcome back for another tutorial with me. Today we're gonna talk about EQ and filters. Very interesting topic, so stay with me. Before start, I wanna just remind you, please leave me a feedback here in the comment section below. Let me know if you found it useful for you and your track this tutorial, and feel free to text me anytime regarding this topic or any other topic. I will be happy to answer to your questions. Now, let's talk about filters. I have a new project today. Usually I do examples with melodic techno and deep house. Today is something different, tech house, so let's have a listen. Very basic loop. The reason why I want to use this, it's because I was actually learning how to make a tech house bass. I mean, I wanted, to improve. This is not my kind of sound, but I found useful, to learn different techniques. So I went through this. This is actually the only MIDI channel, so it's the only thing I created and that I work a bit on. I even delete some tools, but nothing special. The others are loop, and we're gonna see some tricks about EQ and FX with the filter. So we can use. I thought that this one it was perfect for the purpose of today. Okay, now filters and EQ. Before start about that, I have to let you know that today is gonna be a little bit theoretical session. So I have to spend time a little bit just some topic, and I have to let you know that before you start to understand filters or EQ in a very good way, you should study sound theory. The reason is simple. Inside sound theory, you're gonna study the first parameters of waves, very important, like amplitude, frequency, phase, and you need to know these things. Are very related to filters or EQ. Basically, just to clarify, an EQ is composed by filter. So in a kind of wave, they are the same thing. So frequency, what is frequency? This is the only thing I'm gonna talk a bit about today, because we need to know and understand what is frequency to go ahead with this topic. So frequency, it means basically how many cycles a wave complete in 1 second. In a wave, you can find like a pattern. This pattern in the time is gonna be repeated from the wave. This is gonna give me the frequency. It's measured in hertz. So if your waves is gonna complete 25 hertz in 1 second, it's gonna be 25 hertz per second. If it's 1200 in 1 second, is gonna have 1200 hertz. Now your ears perceive between more and less 17, 18, 19, 20 hertz till 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 kilohertz. There is a little bit of range because this is gonna depend from your age and how good are your ears. Now, what we're gonna use, and finally we can go inside Ableton. I'm gonna use the first channel, kick, to start to talk about a little bit about EQ, and I'm gonna use EQ8 at the moment. Now, the first thing that we're gonna understand is that in this display, we're gonna see how my sounds move in the domain of the frequency, not in the time. Very important, domain of the frequency, domain of the time. Check it out. And I'm gonna put on solo. We can see that my kick is basically covering this part of the spectrum. Okay, this is called spectrum, what we're gonna see inside the spectrometer. And what we need to know is that the frequency is even associated to the pitch. So in this case, I'm in the kind of low part of the spectrum. If my range of volume would be here, I was in the high range of the spectrum. Easy to understand. Now we can split the spectrum in 3 bands, which is gonna be low frequency band, mid range, and high frequency. The low frequency is gonna go 20 Hertz, regarding what I said before, so because what you're able to hear, till more or less 150 Hertz. Okay, we're splitting just in 3 bands, but you can split even in more if you wanna like have accurate like EQ or sounds, you know, when you do your things. But at the moment, let's stay with 3. Then 100 till 2500, I would say, is the mid range of frequency. Then up to 2500 till 18, 19, 20 kilohertz is the high range of frequency. Good. So now that we know how we split the spectrum, we can start to see some type of filter. Today I'm gonna talk just about 5 type of filter. There are more. Okay, we're gonna stay in a very basic way. And Ableton is pretty useful, especially EQ8, because it's gonna allow me to see the symbols that are reported even in the analog instruments. So are important to learn this, because once you're gonna use analog stuff like the CLA or very famous compressor and EQ, I said compressor because you can find EQ inside a compressor, so yeah, you're gonna use this symbol, and it's gonna be very important to you to know, because you're gonna understand which filter you're using in this case. Now, filters and EQ are used to basically different purpose, and even here I have to spend a couple of words. I would say the main purpose, these are not all, but the main purpose of the filters are to give definition to the sound, to separate one sound to the other one. This is when you do mixing, one of the things that you can do in mixing. You can, so you said definition, yeah. You can create movement, I would say, like for example, even in the case of further or closer. For example, one sound that you want to make it sound far from something, you're gonna cut, for example, the high frequency. We're gonna go inside that, but this is just a little example. And the last thing, filter are very used as FX. So these are the more or less the main purpose of a filter. So attenuation and boost of volume are the 2 typical tricks that is gonna help me to give definition, separate sounds, and these kind of things. Now, the first filter that is gonna be selected inside Ableton are at the 2, the number 1 and number 4. You're gonna have shelf. Okay, so what it means, they don't cut frequency, they boost or they attenuate frequency. Okay, if I reach till here, it's kind of cut, but it's gonna leave me this little boost. Okay, so we're gonna see there is a better filter if you want to cut. This is the symbol, this is what you can do with a shelf, and nothing else. Now the second filter is called bell filter, is this one. With this one as well, it's typically used when you want to operate on the mid-range of the frequency. You can boost or attenuate frequency even here. And the last 3 filters that I'm gonna show you, but they are 2 filters, sorry, but they are very similar, are the low pass filter and the high pass filter. Let's start with the first one. Is it this one? Is it called high pass filter? This filter is different from the other 2 that I introduced to you, because with this one I'm cutting frequency. Now let's have a look, for example, to my kick. Now it's sounding. If I'm moving this point till here, I'm cutting the low frequency. That's why it's called high pass filter, because it let it pass all the high part of the spectrum. okay? And for example, here I'm listening just to the high part. Here the number 3 is a bell. I can boost this range of the frequency and change completely the sound, or I can attenuate the opposite, okay? Now I have a very similar filter on the opposite way, which is basically the low pass filter. Now it's called low pass because obviously the low part of the spectrum is of the frequency is what they're gonna stay, and I start to cut the high part. Perfect. So these are the basic filters that I can select. Obviously I have more inside Ableton. You can check it out and try to understand what they are. With this triangle you can even see all the filters and have some information. But before say bye today, I wanna do some examples with you, because now we know that I can cut frequency, I can boost volume of some frequency, the same attenuation of some frequency. But let's try to do something to have a very clear understanding about this. Let's start, for example, with my kick. The first thing that I would say, you have never to live on solo when you operate with a filter or with a EQ, because you have to understand how is working what you're doing in relationship with everything. There is something that it sounds amazing by itself, but it will never sound good inside your track. There is something that by itself it will sound shit, but maybe inside your mix is gonna be amazing. And if it sounds amazing inside your mix, that it means is your sample or sound or wherever. Okay, for example, here, what I hear. What I want to do now, I want to cut a little bit of the bass part of my kick, because my bass is pretty big, so I want to leave space to it. So cutting some low frequency. But I need to do some compensation, because if I'm cutting low, I'm gonna lose too much maybe, so I compensate a little bit. And now what I want to do, I want to boost a little bit the high part, you know, just to bring it up, to make it solid, everything inside my mix. That's it, nothing else, I'm not gonna do too much. Now my bass, the purpose of this project, it was to make the bass, so it's what I want, so it's what I'm gonna try to preserve more, and the bass is gonna sound more or less in the same point of the kick, so I'm gonna try to have space to try to reach some space, just reshaping the volume of my frequency now in the bass, and then maybe I'm gonna go back to with the kick. To be honest with you, I'm quite happy. Now, I have to tell you something very important, because this one is a typical mistake that I see. Here, I'm using just 2 sine wave, okay? Doesn't matter about operator if you don't know it. I'm telling you, I'm using just 2 sine wave. 1 octave down, 1 octave up. Now, in general, this is called sub-bass. When you use a sine wave, by definition, it has only one frequency. So EQ 1 sine wave, it doesn't have any sense. In this case, why I did that, it's because I'm introducing extra frequency, because by these other 2 oscillators, okay? But the main things are the 2 sine wave here. This is a suggest or a tip that I wanted to give you. If you see 1 sine wave in general, you will never have 2 EQ, because it has only 1 frequency. In this case, I'm doing that because I have 2 sine wave and I'm creating a little bit of harmonics just with this 2 knob here. But it's like if I have just 2 sine wave, nothing else. So that's why I'm not going to touch it too much with the filter. Most of the job has been done already in the synthesis. Very interesting here to see we start to touch the high part of the spectrum with some drums, okay? So for example, here, what I'm gonna do, I don't want to touch too much the volume because the volume is pretty good, but I want to be sure that I'm gonna cut the low frequency here, so I'm gonna leave space for the rest of my instrument. So when you do these things, you start from here, you try to close as much as possible, even here, and then you go back and you try to understand where is the exact point that you need to find to cut not too much and even not too less about your instrument. And I boost it in the high part of the frequency because now I have the bass in one part. I have the high frequency in this one, so I'm trying to balancing everything. Now I have another loop. This is about it's more percussive loop. Let's have a listen. Now I had to give a little bit of volume because it was too low, I couldn't hear it. I'm gonna use an EQ now. Now in this case, I wanted the first loop in my face, you know, I wanted to come out. If I'm not gonna try to make some contrast in my track, I'm gonna lose like the efficacy of my track. So I'm gonna try to push it down, and in this case, I cut a little bit of the high frequency, so it's gonna seem a little bit further, you know, it's gonna be a little bit hidden. When something is not so clear and is not very perfect in terms of sound and definition, it's when you start to perceive it as it further, you know. This is how I'm affecting my sound. I didn't cut, I just attenuate the high part of the frequency, you know. And now I have the vox, the vocal, you know. Vocal, like, here is a huge topic. Like, I'm not gonna do too much, but related to what you wanna do is how you're gonna treat your voice. Is like not very easy to treat voices in general, you know. There is not a specific rule, depends always what you wanna do. In this case, I'm just gonna clean it to don't make confusion with other topics or whatever. And what I'm gonna do, I can see my voice is sounding here, so, and it's pretty clear because probably I used a sample that it was well treated before. What I can do, I want to just cut a little bit the high frequency and the low frequency, just to have it clear, yeah, to have it better and clear sound. And even because maybe sometimes you can see, not in this case but into another vocal or sample or whatever you're using, you can see that they have some frequency here or here around the main part of your sample or sound, and you want to clean it in this way. You want to be sure that what you're hearing is only the main part, and this vocal is basically the main part of this. So with the EQ there is nothing I can do. I want to just leave it, the voice there, but it's the only instrument in that point now, so is actually is happening what I want. Now we EQ a little bit the instrument, but we said that a filter, it can be even used as effects, and actually it can. Let's have a look into the kick, how to make a typical effects that you hear on dance floor when you go to play or to listen your music, or for example you can hear even in many tracks. In this case I'm gonna use auto filter, which I use quite a lot inside Ableton for my tracks. You can see you have different type of filters here, so I'm gonna choose the high pass filter in this case. And if you activate here, you activate the modulation, the automation part, and you can see like the red line going up and down, so you can even write, you know, this movement of the instrument. We're gonna go inside automation another time, but it's important that you know this. It's pretty fun because you can use this filter as effects in the meantime you're playing. Ableton actually is a live program, so it's pretty fun to connect to your MIDI keyboard and play with that. To do it is very easy. And let's see how I'm affecting now, or how I'm using the filter as effects now to have a fun, basically. Yeah, like this one, you hear it a lot of time when you go in a disco or in a club. Typical effects. Last things I want to say about filters today. I want to say something about the resonance. What is the resonance? We talk about boosting and increasing or attenuating some frequency. Now, resonance is basically the boost of volume on the cutoff point. Cutoff point is basically the point where I start to cut some frequency. Now, if I boost that point, I create resonance. So when you see in a synthesizer resonance, you're creating a boost of frequency where you start to cut with your filter. You don't have in EQ, you can create in the EQ. You have in a filter like here when you want to create effects. Actually, is pretty cool to use, even for example in this case. Let's have a listen. It's just gonna create kind of like this kind of sound. I don't know how to describe it, but can you hear it? This kind of sound. So if you don't overuse it, it's gonna be nice and fun. You know, sometimes production is even about that, even have a fun. So guys, I'm gonna leave the project available for a download. I'm gonna save it like this so you can see everything I did. You can copy my baseline, you can do whatever you want. This is completely free. So let me know what you think about this, and see you soon, guys.